Hello, welcome to the stream. Hey, Leah.
Hello, how's it going, Ben?
Good. Let me get us out of the clouds here. All right. If you're here to see Leah's excellent talk on mining Reddit for content ideas. My name's Ben Swafford. I'm product manager and UX strategist at FourFront. FourFront is a digital marketing agency that harnesses advanced data analytics to deliver faster, smarter, and more impactful results. I'll just be your background guy today. I'll help field any questions that come in, and I'll help with the Q&A that we'll be having after the presentation at the end. This is part of a quarterly effort we've been doing at FourFront to put these on and share some of our knowledge with the community and connect with more folks out there. So you get to learn more about all the expertise people like Leah are bringing to the team, and hopefully it will help you in your own work. Leah is going to be presenting today. She is integrated digital marketing specialist at FourFront, where she combines expertise in SEO, social media marketing, and paid ads to help her clients thrive online. And I think with that, I'll go ahead and pass it to you. Ready to kick this off, Leah?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Ben. So before I get started, I want to get out ahead of something. You might hear a soft, delicate cooing in the background right now. I have a pet pigeon named Hank, who in the last couple of days has decided that he very much likes to take part in video calls, and he's very upset that I'm not letting him present this webinar with me. So he's being very vocal about it, and I apologize. But that is what the weird background noise is. So like Ben said, I am the integrated digital marketing strategist here at FourFront. And today I'm going to be sharing with you my workflow for mining Reddit for human-centric content ideas. Now, I know there are kind of people in different camps when it comes to Reddit. There are folks like me who maybe more often than they like to admit, find themselves falling down Reddit rabbit holes at 1 a.m. There's folks who are like, never, I don't use Reddit, I don't like it. And then I think there's another perhaps growing camp of people who they don't really use Reddit themselves, but they're starting to see the value in it. They know their audience uses it, or their customers use it, or their coworkers use it, and we'll call those folks the Reddit curious. Whichever camp you might find yourself in, I really hope that you'll get some value from today's webinar. And we're going to have a Q&A at the end, like Ben mentioned. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat as we're going through, and I'd be happy to spend some time answering questions at the end. All right, let's get into this. That is the last slide. Give me a moment. I'm going to go back real fast. There's the first slide. Okay, now we'll get into it. So, how this all started. Back in the fall of 2024, I started seeing my colleagues and peers in the industry talking about using AI to pull content ideas from Reddit threads. And I was like, wow, this is a really cool idea. This is this kind of niche topic. People probably haven't thought about that. And so I started really digging into it. In the meantime, something happened. Reddit kind of exploded. And the idea of using Reddit for content strategy is probably not new to most of us at this point. It's become pretty mainstream. So you may already be using Reddit as a part of your marketing strategies. But I still thought that this was a really valuable tool and process to share, because the explosion of Reddit isn't just impacting conversations on Reddit itself, but also the way that Google and AI platforms surface information everywhere else. So, like I said, Reddit has become kind of a hot topic recently, and I'm going to try very hard to keep this presentation focused on 4 very specific things. But please come find me later or send me an email if you want to talk more about Reddit marketing and some of the things that we're not talking about in this webinar today. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about how Reddit ended up being the powerhouse that it is today and what actually makes it so cool and useful. And then I'm going to take you through my workflow for mining Reddit for specific, actionable, human-centric content ideas, complete with a prompt that I stole, that you can then steal from me and start using with your AI tool of choice today. Next, I'm going to spend some time talking about aligning these content ideas that you come up with a format that works and makes sense. This is an area that some of my clients have struggled with or asked about. And so I think it's an important part of this conversation. Like, once you have these ideas, what are some ways that you can put those out into the world in a way that your audience is going to resonate with? And then the last thing I'm going to touch on is why the human touch is essential to this process. Everyone is pushing for everything to be automated and done by AI these days. And while I am a regular AI user, and I'm totally in awe of some of the things that it can help humans accomplish, I'm willing to die on the hill that we can't just hand over the reins. Humans are still an absolutely essential part of this process. So, what's so cool about Reddit anyway? A few things, my friends. First, Reddit is one of the largest and most active online communities in the world. Millions of people interact every single day across thousands of niche subreddits. And the thing that makes it so valuable is also the thing that a lot of people don't like about it. It's kind of raw. It's kind of rough and tumble. People are not polite and polished on Reddit necessarily. You're not going to see those, or hopefully you're not going to see the polished marketing posts and search optimized answers. You're seeing messy, unfiltered stuff, the embarrassing questions that people don't feel comfortable asking anywhere else, their rants, their honest frustrations. And that's honestly gold for understanding what people actually care about. On top of that, Reddit has become more and more integrated into search. Since 2024, Google has been surfacing Reddit and Reddit threads right on page 1. And now Reddit content is even being fed into AI training data. This means that what happens on Reddit does not stay on Reddit. These conversations shape the answers that people get across search engines, AI assistants, and basically everywhere else they're searching on the internet. And for marketers, that is huge. It means that Reddit is both this kind of mirror of real audience needs and also a driver for what people are discovering in search. And when you mine it carefully, you can uncover genuine needs, trending interests, and the gaps that no one else, like your competition, is filling yet. And unlike keyword tools, even those kind of like AI supplemented keyword tools, Reddit doesn't just tell you what people are searching for. It shows you the specific words they use, the emotions behind their questions, the frustrations that keep coming up, kind of broader ways that the community is thinking about these things. It's really a direct line into human-centric content opportunities. So what's a webinar without a Venn diagram, right? Basically, what I'm trying to say with this slide is there's still a real mismatch between the things that people are actually trying to find on the internet and the content that's out there. That's part of why Reddit is so big and why why we've been seeing people adding Reddit to the end of their search queries. It's because the usual stuff that's out there, like 2,000 word listicles about nothing, aren't actually meeting people's needs. By sourcing our content ideas from Reddit, we can start to create more content that actually lands in that sweet spot and answers the questions that our audience is actually asking. So how do we do that? Here's my workflow. I like to break this process down into 6 simple steps. First, we're going to define your target audience. Then we're going to find relevant subreddits. From there, we'll find top threads and questions that people are asking on those subreddits. Then we'll kind of analyze what we find for themes and insights. We'll turn those ideas into content, and then we will use our human eyeballs, and we'll come back to that part. So the first step is defining your target audience. You really want to set your goal and clearly define your target audience, who you're listening to, what problems you want to solve. And if you're not crystal clear on who you're listening to, the rest of this process is not really going to land. So I'd encourage you to get pretty specific and spend a good chunk of time here getting very clear on who you're trying to listen to and solve problems for. One of the joys of Reddit is, because of its broad usership, that you can probably find your super niche audience on Reddit telling you exactly what they need from you. So for the purposes of this presentation, let's imagine, for no particular reason, that our audience is millennial bird watchers in New England. Now, don't look too closely at this photo. I'm pretty sure that's actually a child and not a millennial. And I've never seen a millennial wearing a bucket hat on purpose, but you get the idea. You work with what you've got. So we've got this very specific audience, and I want you to kind of keep it in mind and watch how it guides our search from here. So our second step is to find relevant subreddits. And Reddit's native search bar is surprisingly strong for this. It's pretty good. But there are also a few specific tools you can use. There's, in a very meta fashion, there's a subreddit called Find a Reddit that you can use to help you find other subreddits. There's also a site called reddit-list.com, which is a great way to find kind of specific subreddits. And honestly, my favorite is using a modified Google search, site:/reddit.com bird watching. So there's lots of ways that you can kind of start your search here. I will say that the names of these subreddits can sometimes be surprising. So be sure to look beyond just the obvious, like R bird watching. You're likely to find regional subreddits and even ones with kind of jokey and ironic names that might not be obvious to you if you're not super ingrained in the community. So dig a little bit beyond just what you're seeing that's obvious here. Once we've identified our subreddits, then we're going to be finding top threads and questions on those subreddits. And again, there are a few different ways you can do this. One good place to start is Reddit offers you the option to sort a subreddit by top or hot. That's going to show you the posts and the threads that are getting the most attention. But remember that what's hot in the subreddit in general might not actually be super relevant to your target audience. In birdwatching subs, for example, the highest engagement posts are basically just bird photos. It's pretty, they're great, they're really cool to look at, but not super helpful if you're trying to understand frustrations beyond what bird is this. And so that means digging deeper. This post that I have screenshotted here, which I'm sure you can't read, is about how your birdwatching hobby impacts your work. And I thought that this might be a really relevant example for our niche audience of millennial birdwatchers. So let me give you the TLDR, since I'm sure you can't read the post. Here, the OP is talking. OP is original poster for you Reddit newbies. The OP is talking about how they travel for work and how one of their favorite things to do while they're traveling is to bring their camera and their binoculars and stuff and do some bird watching in their free time in all of these different places that they're traveling to. And they're talking about how on one of these trips, they brought their camera bag into a meeting for work because they didn't have time to go back to the hotel. And they got a lot of flack about it from their colleagues and their boss, who said that it was unprofessional to bring their personal hobby equipment with them to a work meeting. And then in the comments, we get people chiming in about how OP's coworkers are jerks and how they do the same thing all the time and how it's totally acceptable to have hobbies you're passionate about outside of work. Other people jump in with some really heartfelt career advice. Some folks try to look at it from the perspective of the mean boss. Other people jump in with recommendations for more discreet cameras or bags that the OP could put their gear in and be a little more subtle. So the responses in the thread here are really running the gamut. And this seems really relevant to that millennial birdwatcher audience, right? And I never would have found this post if I had just stuck to the hot filter in the birdwatching subreddit. So really don't be afraid to do a little digging. This is a part of the process that's going to be a little bit more manual, but it will pay off for you. All right. So after we have identified our audience and found the subreddits where that audience is hanging out, and we found some really relevant threads where they're asking questions we might be able to help them with, now it's time to kind of analyze all of these things, put them together, and find out the themes and insights. And there are a few ways you can do this, but it's really where AI shines. Now, don't get me wrong, you could totally do this process without AI, but it's going to be a little slower. You could export those threads, read through them, do some manual qualitative coding about themes and sentiments, compile your data, and go from there, 100%. You could also use a custom AI tool like my super genius boss at FourFront, Bob, has built for us that really does kind of all of the finding and scraping and synthesizing for you instantaneously. But for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to show you how to do this with your AI chatbot of choice. I think that is a really accessible option for most people. And I want you to be able to leave here and start implementing this like this afternoon. So you can cluster these posts in ChatGPT or Perplexity or Grok or, again, your AI tool of choice to identify repeated pain points, recurring language, and hidden opportunities. Change my slide here. All right, so some ideas for prompting. I found it really helpful to look for pain points and frustrations, embarrassing questions, the emotions that people have tied up in these questions, hidden themes. You can really have it all. And I found a great prompt. Like I said, I stole this from a colleague in the SEO industry. And I would recommend that you use this as your starting point too, because it really helps to kind of get past that like keyword level analysis and help discover some fun patterns. So here's the prompt. Don't worry about like screenshotting that or taking a picture or anything. I do have a free download where this is included along with all of the other steps in the workflow. We'll talk more about that later. But I did just want to give a quick overview of this prompt and show some of the cool things that it's doing so you can keep those in mind when you're either writing your own prompts or tweaking from here. So this is a prompt that Will Reynolds shared a while back on LinkedIn, and it's pretty good. I've been playing with it a lot. The structure of this prompt forces the AI, like I said, to go past that kind of surface level, keyword level analysis and really gets into the human layer of the conversation. And even if this prompt isn't exactly what you're looking for, like I said, it's a great place to start and build from. This one is designed kind of to look at one post at a time, but it is pretty easy to tweak if you wanted to upload multiple similar threads and analyze themes across those threads. So now we've got our prompt, and I plugged in a slightly tweaked version of that prompt that I just showed you with our bird watching hobby thread that we talked about before. And here's what I got. So all of a sudden, we've got some very human ideas for engaging with this audience. They're not your standard ChatGPT, give me blog post ideas about bird watching. This really gives us insight on places where we can connect with and meet the needs of this audience, not just by selling them something, but by seeing them as human beings. So first, we're seeing that kind of reassurance. You're not alone in this. That's a really powerful emotional anchor. We're also seeing humor and lightness, people sharing memes and comics about the awkward overlap of work and hobbies. And we're also seeing this kind of through line of this craving for normalization. People want to see their passions treated as valid and relatable and not as quirks that set them apart or get them in trouble. So notice how these really aren't the cookie cutter content ideas that you get from a keyword tool. These are human insights and emotional currents that you can build real connections around. All right. So that prompt that I shared, in addition to giving you those kind of emotional through lines, which I think are really gold, really what you're looking for in this process, it's also going to kick out some kind of starter content ideas for you. I always recommend spending some time with these ideas, actually mapping them to different formats, whether that's a blog post or an FAQ or a how-to guide, a day in the life video, a LinkedIn post, a short form video, or even an interactive AMA or something back on Reddit. And I found it to be really helpful to hold on to the real words and phrases that people are using on Reddit, instead of trying to translate the things that they're saying into more polished, like marketing speak. I recommend using people's exact phrasing where you can. That helps to make your content resonate, and it also helps you capture visibility in search. So going back to our content formats here, if I had been giving a webinar on SEO a few years ago, this might have sounded heretical, but your blog should not be your go-to content format anymore. The way people consume content is very fragmented. Your audience is on YouTube and on LinkedIn and on TikTok and in their inboxes. And so if you can, it's worth not only just not sharing all of your content on one channel, but kind of relating it to multiple channels, tweaking it and making it into a blog post and a video and a LinkedIn post, for example. So, okay, we plugged in our Millennial Bird Watchers thread, and here are some of the content ideas that prompt said that we could actually create for them. So it started with storytelling and relatable experiences. So imagine maybe a blog series or a series of short form videos that spotlight people bird watching in their professional lives. So maybe one week we're highlighting a corporate lawyer who goes bird watching at dawn before heading into the office, and that's how he gets through working in big law. Maybe another week it's the teacher who keeps binoculars in her glove box and sits on her lunch break and watches birds in the parking lot. This kind of works because people love stories. They see themselves in them. And this type of content helps to build community and not just traffic. The next content idea that we got out of this prompt is practical tips and guides. And these are going to be the kind of evergreen, high value posts that people will save. Think 5 ways to discreetly pack your birding gear for your next business trip, or how to balance your serious hobbies with a demanding job. And this works because people actually search for these practical solutions, and they're highly shareable. They're also SEO friendly because they map to kind of specific, like, how do I and is it okay queries. And again, you can stretch these into multiple formats. These practical guides could be, obviously a blog post, but it could also be a TikTok or a carousel on LinkedIn, especially since we're talking about that kind of overlap between hobbies and work. LinkedIn could be a great platform for this content. All right, next one we had was community spotlights and supportive resources. So here's where we're leaning into that inclusivity that we flagged earlier on when we were talking about those emotional undercurrents. So we can lean into inclusivity and showcase the diversity of people who birdwatch, people across industries and different types of jobs and ways of life, librarians, office workers, scientists, and frame it with empathy. We can use a tone that normalizes the passion instead of marginalizing it. And this works because it helps to create a sense of belonging. When people see others like them, it validates their experience. And this kind of content actually performs really well on Reddit itself because you're feeding value back into the community and not just mining from it. So my larger point here is don't lock yourself into one content format. For every theme or insight you uncover on Reddit, there are going to be multiple ways to bring it to life, and each one strengthens the connection with your audience. So just keep in mind, again, you have your specific audience identified, think about where they are and where this kind of content is going to resonate with them, and put it in those different places. All right. So the last part that I told you we were going to come back to, this is the part that I really want to drive home. If you walk away from this webinar remembering only one thing, let it be this. AI is powerful, but it can't replace human judgment. It can cluster and organize at lightning speed. It can spot patterns across hundreds of posts in seconds. But there are some things that it can't do. It can't detect sarcasm. It doesn't get inside jokes. It doesn't understand regional slang, or when people are being ironic, or when they're venting just to vent. And if you rely on AI alone for this process, it's going to flatten those nuances and spit back something that might be technically correct, but deeply off in tone. And then we risk putting out content that is robotic and tone deaf and maybe even offensive. So always apply your human lens. After you've run your prompts and seen the clusters, ask yourself, does this actually feel true to my audience? Is this ethically sourced? Am I respecting the community and not just exploiting it? If I put this piece of content out, will my audience recognize themselves in it, or will they feel misrepresented? And I also want to give some specific pointers for what not to do, because I think that that's just as important. So first, don't just copy and paste AI output. It's very tempting to take whatever ChatGPT or Perplexity hands you and think, oh, this is good enough, and just drop it straight into a blog post. But if you do that, you're going to end up with content that feels generic and soulless and is honestly probably wrong in places. And your audience will notice. AI is a great assistant. I love using AI for solving blank page syndrome. It's great for a first draft, but it's not your writer. Also, don't assume that AI got the tone right. If a thread is sarcastic or angry or tongue-in-cheek, which a lot of threads on Reddit are, AI is often going to misread that as completely sincere. And if you publish based on that misunderstanding, you're going to sound pretty tone deaf. And last, don't outsource your empathy. AI can surface patterns very well, but it can't understand the why behind them. If you don't put your own judgment and empathy on top of the data that you get, you're going to miss that human connection, which is really the whole point, the whole reason we're doing this process. So if you're going into Reddit to find content ideas so you can connect with your audience, you also need to then put in the kind of emotional labor to actually connect with your audience. And a few things that I found while I was testing out this process is a lot of the content ideas come from those outliers. So if you're setting your AI to identify patterns and through lines and things that come up over and over again, you might miss that oddball comment that makes you stop and think, or a kind of niche frustration that only a couple of people mention. Those are the sparks that can make content unique, and that's something the AI is almost always going to miss. So here's the bigger picture here. Audiences can smell inauthenticity. They know when something was churned out by a machine versus when a real human put the work in to listen and empathize and respond. The brands who are going to win using these tactics are the ones who will use AI as a tool, but never hand over the reins completely. They'll continue to show up as human beings and respect communities and care about creating content that's actually helpful. Because at the end of the day, AI is just a starting point. The human touch is what really makes content trustworthy, ethical, and resonant. So let me wrap this all up. My closing thought for you all today is that AI is not and never will be a replacement for human creativity, not in art, not in love, and not in marketing. But we can and should use these tools to organize, to accelerate, to uncover patterns, but it's still our responsibility as marketers to then apply empathy and nuance and ethics on top of that. So bringing it full circle, today we covered 3 big ideas. The first, we talked about why Reddit matters And that's because it's one of the most authentic, unfiltered windows into what people really care about. And it's shaping conversations not only on the platform, not only on Reddit itself, but what shows up across the internet in search and AI answers. Then we talked about the workflow, where we define our audience, find our subreddits, dig into threads and questions, analyze those for through lines and themes, and then we map that to content formats and apply our own human kind of quality assurance to that. And then we got to the human touch, which is the part that actually makes this all work. Without it, you're just copying and pasting from a robot. With it, you're creating content that resonates because it reflects real people. So take care of each other. Take care of your audiences. See them as people first and not just traffic sources or lead sources. And when you use Reddit, don't just mine it for ideas. Try to contribute back where you can and show up as a part of the conversation. In a world where AI answers are everywhere, the work that will stand out is the work that feels human. That's how we build trust. That's how we connect. And that's how we stay relevant in a landscape that's only going to get noisier. Thank you so much for being here today. If you want to keep the conversation going, here's how you can reach me. My email address. I'd also love to connect on LinkedIn. Feel free to send me a message and we can keep chatting. But now we've got some time for questions. Hey, Ben.
Yeah. Hey, Leah. Great job. Yeah, we do have some questions coming in. If anybody has anything you want to pop in, just drop it in your comments and whatever platform you're in. We'll see it on our end. Yeah, it was great, Leah. I think that's the first time I've actually seen the whole presentation. To me, it felt like user research through Reddit, synthesizing that into some kind of understanding and ideas. And then I think at the end, it's kind of like, do some actual writing. Don't just tell the AI to do it and then call it a day.
Yeah, I did get on my soapbox a little bit there at the end, but I do think it's important because anyone can prompt ChatGPT. I still think that writing and connection it's still a human job. It just hasn't been able to replace us yet.
Yeah, not yet. Maybe someday. No, but I completely agree. We do have the QR code there for the free download. If you go to forefront.us/Reddit, you can also get to that free resource. So we got an early question from our friend Christina. Let me see if I can pop it up. So how do you handle all the slang and inside jokes on Reddit when turning those ideas into polished blog posts? Have you ever had an AI tool totally misinterpret something from Reddit, and how did you fix it?
That's a great question, Christina. And I think that the answer is going to depend a lot on your brand and your brand voice and the ways that it's okay or not okay for you to communicate. If you can, I think it's probably a good thing to use, like I was saying, use the language that people are using on Reddit in your content, whether that's a blog post or a video or whatever you land on. So if you can, I would recommend using some of that slang if you can make it work naturally in your content. I definitely have had Reddit mess up and not understand. It's really sarcasm is the thing on Reddit that at least Perplexity just can't comprehend sarcasm, and it's all over Reddit. So again, it's going to take a little bit of human QA. Like you should kind of read through the threads before you plop them into your tool of choice, so you have an understanding of what's going on in there, so that when you get your analysis back, you have an idea of whether it's right or wrong, and you can kind of add in things from your own experience.
Very cool. Yeah, I love your point about sarcasm. That made me think a lot. And I think some of that's cultural too. Like I know when I'm sarcastic with people in other countries, they don't always know that I'm kind of joking. So it makes sense. All right, we have another one from Brandon. How can you tell the difference between a real valuable insight versus just random internet noise on Reddit?
Another good question. Thank you, Brandon. So this, again, is going to depend a little bit on you. and how well you know or understand the audience. Presumably, if you're creating marketing content for this audience, you have some data on them. You have a pretty good understanding of how they work. And so, again, using the AI to identify themes, that's going to be a pretty good tool. If something is a pattern, if it's coming up again and again, I think that it's a pretty safe bet that that's not just internet noise. But it is going to take a little bit of your understanding of the audience that you're trying to serve. Again, people on Reddit, like, it can be super valuable, but it can also just be a barrel of monkeys. So it's going to take a little bit of critical thinking. If you see something that's maybe not quite right, try seeing if you can find it somewhere else to kind of corroborate. And if not, if you're not sure whether that's actually going to be relevant or resonate with your audience, maybe skip it and stick with some of those themes that you were able to find coming up again and again.
Tacking onto that, I was curious in your experience, Leah, when I've been on Reddit, I've noticed there's, like you said, a lot of inside jokes, a lot of even just weird rules within certain communities. Do you think that it's kind of a prerequisite to sort of familiarize yourself with those nuances when you're analyzing a specific community?
Maybe not necessarily if you're just mining Reddit. Like if you're just going in and looking and kind of pulling content from them, you might not need to spend a ton of time like really getting familiar with the rules and nuances of a particular subreddit. But if you're going to do the other side where you're actually engaging on Reddit, absolutely must spend the time familiarizing yourself with the way people engage on that subreddit and also what their individual rules are, because they can change pretty drastically even within like a larger community.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And I might have stolen the thunder of Jared's question, which is next up. He mentioned great tips for how to find content out and address it outside of Reddit through your content strategy. But then he followed up and said, do you have any experience or tips on engaging within Reddit? So already familiarize yourself, but I want to build on that.
Yeah. Familiarize yourself with the communities that you're going to be engaging with. Also, spend some time actually just being a member of that community before you try to do anything remotely marketing related. Like, you're probably going to want to make a dozen posts where you don't mention your product or services or company or resources at all before you start trying to market on Reddit. This has been kind of an evolving area, and I could and probably will at some point give another talk just on this side of it. But since Reddit kind of popped onto the scene in 2024 when Google started putting it on page one of the SERPs, marketers have been like tripping over themselves to try to figure out how to capitalize on that. And in the meantime, I think we've kind of ruined Reddit a little bit. Like, now you do go into threads and you see like very polished, maybe written by AI posts where people are just trying to market, and it's not authentic engagement. They're not actually really a part of the community. They're just kind of dropping in and dropping their marketing posts and ditching. They never engage on anything else that's not specifically related to what they're trying to push. And so I hate to see that, because the thing, like I've said in the presentation, the thing that makes Reddit actually valuable is that kind of rawness and the fact that it's not polished. And so, yeah, I think my big tip for if you're going to engage on Reddit is to be a real part of the community and don't just be in there dropping your resources or your links to your blog post. Engage on things that aren't directly relevant to your brand as well, and be a real contributing part of each community that you're in.
Great advice. And I think a lot of people are thinking about Reddit these days, so definitely interested in your follow-up talk on engaging on Reddit. I think if we could stay there for a second and I'm kind of putting on the hat of, I have a business. I'm thinking I should be on Reddit. I've heard that it's this crazy Wild West. Is it too risky to go on there? Do you have any kind of like words of wisdom or advice as people think about like, should I add this into my marketing mix or not?
Yeah, I think that most businesses and most niches are going to be able to find at least a small representation of their audience on Reddit. But I think that just like anything, when you're running a business, like do a little market research first. Like type in some relevant keywords into the Reddit search bar and see what you get. Like, are people having real conversations about your product or service or offering? Is that a conversation that's already happening without you kind of sorry, I bumped my microphone, kind of artificially creating it? Because if those conversations aren't happening organically without you, you can try all you want, you're not going to be able to jumpstart them. So I would do a little research and see whether your market is really active on Reddit. Again, I would think about kind of your team resources. Like, do you have someone on your team who's familiar with Reddit other than just like, oh yeah, I've looked at it sometimes, or my teenage son uses Reddit, I'm sure he could explain it to me. Like, do you have someone on your marketing team or on your content team perhaps that actually uses Reddit and understands how it works and would be comfortable engaging, not just in polished professional speak? I think it's going to vary from business to business and even team to team. If you're curious, shoot me a message and I'll give you my opinion. But I think in classic SEO fashion, the answer is it depends.
Always depends. I know we weren't planning to talk too much about that, but that's great advice. I think that might be useful to some people here. Well, I think we're at the end of our questions. Let me pull up our extra large QR code and remind you that we do have this resource. It summarizes some of the things Leah's told us today. Thank you all for being here. And Leah, one last question just to wrap it up. If there's one thing, going back to the original topic of mining Reddit for content ideas, is there one thing from that presentation that you'd want people to step away and remember?
Yes. Not to continue beating this drum, but it is that if for any process where you're going to use AI, you need to apply a level, perhaps a very hefty level of human QA and oversight. It's not great about understanding tone and content. It can make some silly mistakes, and people are seeing more and more AI generated content out there. People are getting very adept at sniffing it out, basically. And so you really need to spend the time adding a level of human oversight to any process that you're using AI for.
Great. Yeah, I love the term AI slop that's kind of become mainstream recently.
Mm-hmm.
We want to avoid contributing to the slop, right?
Exactly.
All right, great. Well, thanks again, Leah, for taking your time to share all this. Thank you all out in the audience or watching the recording for being here. Please reach out, download the white paper, I guess maybe we'd call it. Reach out to Leah if you have questions. She's very willing to connect with you. Thanks again.
Thank you, Ben.